The unlikely meeting. Emma Caldwell never thought her life would take such a dramatic turn. At 28, she was living a structured, routine-driven life as an interior designer in the bustling city of Portland. Her days were filled with sketching layouts, sourcing materials, and managing demanding clients. While Emma had a small circle of friends and family who adored her, her love life was practically non-existent. She often told herself she was too busy to date, but deep down, she longed for a connection that would transcend the mundane. One rainy afternoon, Emma found herself stuck in traffic after a long day at work. She decided to stop by a quaint little cafe she had passed many times but never entered. It was cozy and inviting, with wooden interiors and soft jazz playing in the background. As she ordered her coffee, her attention was drawn to a man sitting near the window, engrossed in a book. He had an air of calm about him that seemed to contrast with the bustling city outside. The man was Mason Blake, a 32-year-old with a quiet demeanor and a warm smile. Mason was a writer and artist, someone who observed the world with a depth Emma found intriguing. However, it wasn't his creative aura that caught her attention. It was the wheelchair he was in. Emma couldn't help but admire his confident posture and the way he seemed completely at ease with himself. As fate would have it, there was only one empty seat in the cafe, and it happened to be at Mason's table. Emma hesitated for a moment before walking over. "Excuse me, would you mind if I sat here? Everywhere else is taken." Mason looked up from his book and smiled. "Not at all. Please, go ahead." The two exchanged polite conversation at first, but soon, their discussion deepened. Mason told Emma about his life as an artist and his journey to rediscover his passion after a life-altering accident years ago. He had been a promising athlete, but a freak car accident left him with spinal cord injuries, confining him to a wheelchair. Despite the challenges, he had rebuilt his life and found joy in his art. Emma found herself captivated by Mason's resilience. His positivity was infectious, and she couldn't help but feel a pull toward him. By the end of their conversation, they exchanged contact information, and Emma walked out of the cafe with a flutter in her chest that she hadn't felt in years. Over the next few weeks, Emma and Mason began to see more of each other. Their connection grew stronger with each meeting. Mason's humor and optimism complemented Emma's thoughtful and creative nature. They quickly realized that their lives had been missing something essential: each other. But as their relationship blossomed, Emma couldn't ignore the questions that began to creep into her mind. She admired Mason deeply, but she worried about the societal judgments they might face and the challenges they would encounter as a couple. Mason, on the other hand, worried that Emma might feel burdened by his physical limitations. Despite their fears, they found comfort in each other. Mason often told Emma, "Life isn't about what happens to us. It's about how we respond to it. Together, we can handle anything." Emma believed him. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be, by Mason's side. Their relationship soon became the talk of their respective circles. Emma's friends and family were supportive, though some expressed concern about the difficulties they might face. Mason's friends were thrilled to see him so happy but reminded him to take things slowly. Yet, neither Emma nor Mason let the doubts of others deter them. One evening, as they sat together in Mason's art studio, surrounded by his paintings and sketches, Mason took Emma's hand and said, "You've brought so much light into my life. I never thought I'd feel this way again, but with you, everything feels possible." Emma smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You've shown me what true strength looks like, Mason. I'm so lucky to have found you." The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but they both knew it would be worth it. Little did Emma know, Mason was already planning a surprise that would change both of their lives forever. Strength and vulnerability. As Emma and Mason's relationship grew deeper, their lives began to intertwine in ways that neither of them had anticipated. They became a team, facing challenges together while celebrating each other's triumphs. Emma quickly learned that Mason's world, though different from her own, was rich with lessons about resilience, determination, and the power of embracing vulnerability. Mason lived in a modest apartment that doubled as his art studio. The walls were adorned with his vivid paintings, each one telling a story of his journey. Emma often found herself mesmerized by his work. One day, as she admired a painting of a lone tree standing tall against a stormy sky, she asked, "What inspired this one?" Mason smiled, setting his brush down. "That's how I felt after the accident. Alone, battered, but still standing." It's a reminder that even in the worst storms, there's strength in simply enduring. Emma's admiration for Mason grew with every story he shared. She began to see the world through his eyes, a place where struggles were not burdens but opportunities for growth. Yet she also saw the hidden toll his challenges took on him. Despite his unwavering positivity, there were moments when Mason struggled with his limitations. He was human, after all. One evening, Mason confided in Emma about his darkest days after the accident. "There were times I didn't think I'd make it," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I felt like I'd lost everything. My independence, my dreams, even my sense of self. But then I realized something. I wasn't defined by what I couldn't do. I was defined by how I chose to move forward." Emma reached for his hand, her eyes brimming with tears. "You're the strongest person I've ever met," she said. "But you don't always have to be strong. It's okay to let yourself feel vulnerable." Her words struck a chord with Mason. He realized that for the first time in years, he felt safe enough to let his guard down. Emma wasn't just his partner. She was his anchor, someone who saw him for who he truly was, flaws and all. Preparing for the future. As their relationship deepened, they began to talk about their future. Emma shared her dream of opening her own interior design studio, while Mason talked about hosting his first art exhibition. They supported each other's aspirations, often staying up late into the night brainstorming ideas and setting goals. However, they were also keenly aware of the practical challenges they would face as a couple. Emma took it upon herself to learn everything she could about accessibility and how to navigate the world with a partner who used a wheelchair. She researched adaptive technologies, attended workshops, and even joined support groups for couples in similar situations. Mason, in turn, began to think about how he could contribute more to their life together. He had always been fiercely independent, but he wanted to ensure that he was an equal partner in their relationship. He started experimenting with new art techniques that could generate more income, and he also began physical therapy sessions to improve his upper body strength. One day, during a routine therapy session, Mason overheard his therapist discussing advancements in prosthetics with another patient. The idea sparked something in him, a longing he hadn't allowed himself to entertain in years. He knew that standing on his own 2 feet again was a long shot, but the thought of surprising Emma with something as simple as walking into their wedding stirred a deep resolve within him. Mason began researching prosthetics in secret. He met with specialists and started training with a physiotherapist who believed in his determination. It was grueling work, both physically and emotionally. There were days when the pain and frustration felt insurmountable, but Mason held on to the image of Emma's face when she saw him walk for the first time. Trials and tribulations. While Mason worked tirelessly on his surprise, Emma faced her own challenges. Her decision to be with Mason wasn't always met with understanding. Some of her colleagues questioned her commitment, hinting that she was sacrificing too much. Even a few close friends expressed concerns, asking if she was truly prepared for the realities of life with someone who had a disability. Their doubts stung, but Emma refused to let them shake her resolve. "Mason isn't a burden," she told them firmly. "He's my partner, and he makes me a better person. Our love isn't about what he can or can't do. It's about who we are together." Despite her confidence, there were moments when Emma felt the weight of their circumstances. One particularly challenging day, after helping Mason navigate a frustrating series of inaccessible locations, she broke down in tears. Mason found her sitting on the couch, her head in her hands. "What's wrong?" he asked gently, wheeling over to her. Emma looked up, her face streaked with tears. "I just want to make things easier for you," she said. "But sometimes it feels like no matter how hard I try, the world is just unfair." Mason reached for her hand, his touch grounding her. "Emma, you've already made my life easier in ways you don't even realize. You've given me hope, love, and a reason to keep pushing forward. We're in this together, remember." His words were a balm to her soul. In that moment, Emma realized that their strength lay not in avoiding difficulties, but in facing them together. The proposal. As the months passed, their bond only deepened. One crisp autumn evening, Mason invited Emma to his art studio for what he described as a special unveiling. When she arrived, she found the room illuminated by soft candlelight, with one of Mason's most beautiful paintings displayed on an easel. It depicted a vibrant field of wildflowers, with two figures standing together under a golden sky. Emma turned to Mason, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Is this us?" Mason nodded, his expression tender. "It's us, Emma. And I want to spend the rest of my life painting this picture with you." Before she could respond, Mason reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Opening it to reveal a delicate ring, he said, "Emma Caldwell, you've brought more color into my life than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Emma's face as she nodded emphatically. "Yes, Mason. 1,000 times, yes." As they embraced, the world outside seemed to fade away. In that moment, they were simply two souls bound by love, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. What Emma didn't know was that Mason's proposal was only the beginning of his plan to make their wedding day unforgettable. His journey toward fulfilling that dream was about to take an extraordinary turn. The hidden journey. The months leading up to Mason and Emma's wedding were a whirlwind of activity. Between selecting a venue, finalizing guest lists, and working on the intricate details of their big day, Emma was immersed in planning. She approached every task with excitement, pouring her heart into ensuring that the wedding would reflect the love she and Mason shared. What Emma didn't know was that Mason was on a secret journey of his own, a journey that would push him to his physical and emotional limits, but held the promise of a moment he had dreamed of for months. The seed of an idea. The idea had first taken root during a routine visit to Mason's physiotherapist. As Mason worked through his exercises, he overheard another patient discussing the use of advanced prosthetics. The concept ignited something in him, a daring hope that he had buried long ago. He started asking questions, gathering information, and slowly, a plan began to take shape. Mason's physiotherapist, Dr. Ellen Grant, was initially skeptical. "Mason, this isn't just about wearing prosthetics," she cautioned. "It's about retraining your body and mind. You'll need months of intensive therapy, and even then, there are no guarantees." But Mason's resolve was unshakable. "I understand the risks," he told her, "but I want to try. I want to give Emma something unforgettable on our wedding day." Dr. Grant saw the determination in his eyes and agreed to help. They devised a rigorous training regimen that would prepare Mason for the possibility of standing, if only for a moment, during the ceremony. A grueling challenge. The training was more demanding than Mason had anticipated. It began with strengthening exercises to build his core and upper body, which would support the weight of the prosthetics. He spent hours each day lifting weights, doing balance drills, and practicing repetitive movements designed to stimulate muscle memory. The physical pain was intense, but it was nothing compared to the emotional toll. There were days when Mason felt like giving up, moments when the frustration of slow progress brought him to tears. But every time he thought about Emma and the look of surprise and joy he hoped to see on her face, he found the strength to keep going. Dr. Grant became both his coach and confidant, encouraging him through the darkest moments. "You're doing this for love, Mason," she reminded him during one particularly difficult session. "And love is the strongest motivator there is." As the weeks turned into months, Mason began to see progress. He was fitted with a pair of custom prosthetic legs, which required painstaking adjustments to ensure they were comfortable and functional. Learning to use them was an entirely new challenge. Each step was a battle against gravity, balance, and his own self-doubt. The cover-up. To keep his plan a secret, Mason had to get creative. He told Emma that his increased therapy sessions were for general health and mobility, framing them as a way to ensure he was in the best shape for their wedding. Emma was supportive, as always, never suspecting that Mason's efforts were driven by a much bigger goal. Mason also enlisted the help of his best friend, Luke, who became his confidant and partner in secrecy. Luke often accompanied Mason to his sessions, offering encouragement and occasionally helping to cover for him when Emma's curiosity got too close to the truth. "You're really going all out for this," Luke said one evening after a particularly grueling session. "Emma's going to be blown away." "That's the plan," Mason replied, wiping sweat from his brow. "She's done so much for me. I want to show her how much she means to me, in a way she'll never forget." Balancing two worlds. While Mason juggled his secret training, Emma was pouring her energy into wedding preparations. She found joy in the smallest details, from choosing the perfect shade of flowers to designing a custom invitation suite that reflected their love story. Mason admired her dedication, even as he felt a pang of guilt for the lies he was telling to keep his secret. There were moments when Emma noticed Mason's exhaustion or caught a flicker of pain in his eyes. "Are you sure you're okay?" she asked him one evening as they sat together reviewing their seating chart. Mason smiled and squeezed her hand. "I'm fine, Em. Just a little tired from therapy, but it's worth it. Every bit of it." Emma accepted his explanation, though a small part of her wondered if there was more to the story. She didn't press him, trusting that Mason would share whatever was on his mind when he was ready. The near disaster. Mason's determination to perfect his surprise nearly came to a halt one fateful afternoon. During a training session, he miscalculated his balance while practicing a step and fell hard to the ground. The impact left him shaken, his confidence rattled, and his body aching. Dr. Grant rushed to his side. "Mason, you have to be more careful," she admonished. "Your body can only take so much." Lying on the floor, Mason felt a wave of doubt wash over him. What if he couldn't do it? What if he failed in front of everyone, especially Emma? The thought was almost unbearable. But as he lay there, another thought emerged, a memory of Emma's unwavering belief in him. She had stood by him through every challenge, never doubting his strength or worth. He realized that the fear of failure paled in comparison to his love for her. With Dr. Grant's help, Mason got back on his feet, both literally and figuratively. The fall became a turning point, solidifying his resolve to see his plan through to the end. The final countdown. As the wedding day approached, Mason's training intensified. He had mastered standing for brief periods and taking a few tentative steps. Though the effort was still immense, he knew he wouldn't be able to walk far, but he hoped it would be enough to create the moment he envisioned. The night before the wedding, Mason confided in Luke. "Do you think I'm crazy for doing this?" he asked, his voice tinged with nerves. Luke shook his head. "Not at all. What you're doing is incredible, Mason. Emma's going to see just how much she means to you, and trust me, she'll love you no matter what happens tomorrow." Mason nodded, grateful for his friend's support. As he lay in bed that night, he couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Tomorrow would be the culmination of months of hard work and a testament to the love that had transformed his life. What Mason didn't know was that Emma, too, was lying awake, thinking about the life they were about to build together. She had no idea that the man she loved was preparing to give her a gift that would redefine their love story forever. The wedding day. The morning of Emma and Mason's wedding dawned bright and clear, as if the universe itself was celebrating their union. Emma woke with a flutter of excitement and nervous anticipation. She had spent months envisioning this day, and now it was finally here. As she sat in her hotel suite, surrounded by her closest friends and family, She couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for everything that had brought her to this moment. Her bridesmaids bustled around her, making last-minute adjustments to her dress and perfecting her makeup. The room was filled with laughter and the faint strains of a love ballad playing softly in the background. Emma's mother, Margaret, handed her a cup of tea and sat beside her, a knowing smile on her face. "You're glowing, sweetheart," Margaret said. "I've never seen you so happy." Emma smiled, her eyes misting. "I am, Mom. Mason. He's everything I didn't know I needed. I feel like I'm finally complete." Margaret squeezed her hand. "That's how it should feel. Marriage isn't about perfection. It's about finding someone who makes you better, who stands beside you through everything. Mason is a good man, Emma. I'm so proud of you." As Emma prepared for the ceremony, she felt an overwhelming sense of calm. She wasn't nervous about marrying Mason. She knew, without a doubt, that he was the one. The man who had shown her what it meant to love unconditionally, to find strength in vulnerability, and to embrace life's imperfections. Mason's preparations. Across town, Mason was also preparing for the big day, but his morning was anything but calm. In addition to the usual pre-wedding jitters, he was grappling with the enormity of his surprise. Today wasn't just about marrying the love of his life. It was about showing Emma how much she meant to him in a way that transcended words. Luke, his best man, was by his side, helping him into his suit and offering words of encouragement. "You've got this, Mason," Luke said as he adjusted Mason's tie. "You've worked so hard for this moment. Emma's going to be blown away." Mason nodded, his hands trembling slightly. "I just want everything to go perfectly," he admitted. "She deserves the best." Luke clapped him on the shoulder. "And you're giving her the best. Remember, today isn't about perfection. It's about love. And you've got that in spades." As Mason glanced at the prosthetic legs that leaned against the wall, a mix of anxiety and determination coursed through him. He had spent months training for this moment, pushing his body to its limits and enduring setbacks that had tested his resolve. Today was the culmination of all that effort. He knew he couldn't walk far, or for long, but even a few steps would be enough to show Emma how much he loved her. The ceremony begins. The wedding took place at a picturesque vineyard nestled in the hills. Rows of white chairs were set up on the lawn, overlooking a stunning view of rolling green fields and distant mountains. A floral arch, adorned with Emma's favorite flowers, peonies, roses, and hydrangeas, stood at the end of the aisle, framing the spot where she and Mason would exchange their vows. Guests began to arrive, their chatter filling the air with excitement. Friends and family from both sides marveled at the beauty of the setting, snapping photos and complimenting the meticulous attention to detail. As the musicians began to play a soft melody, the energy shifted, signaling the start of the ceremony. Mason took his place at the front, his wheelchair positioned near the altar. He looked dashing in his tailored navy suit, his face a mixture of anticipation and calm. Luke stood beside him, offering silent support. Mason's heart raced as he caught sight of the bridesmaids walking down the aisle, their dresses swishing softly as they moved. And then, the music changed. Emma appeared at the top of the aisle, her arm linked with her father's. The moment Mason saw her, his breath caught. She looked radiant in her ivory gown, the lace detailing shimmering in the sunlight. Her veil framed her face like a halo, and her smile was luminous. As she walked toward him, their eyes locked, and the world seemed to fade away. Emma felt her heart swell as she approached Mason. His eyes, filled with love and admiration, reassured her that this was exactly where she was meant to be. When she reached the altar, her father kissed her cheek and placed her hand in Mason's. "You're stunning," Mason whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Emma smiled, her eyes glistening. "So are you." A surprise unveiled. The ceremony began, with the officiant leading the couple through their vows. Emma and Mason spoke from the heart, their words weaving a tapestry of love, resilience, and hope. There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd as they exchanged rings, promising to stand by each other through every challenge and triumph. As the ceremony neared its conclusion, the officiant turned to the guests and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, as a symbol of their union, I invite everyone to rise and celebrate this moment with Emma and Mason." Emma instinctively turned toward Mason, expecting to see him smiling from his wheelchair. Instead, she saw something that made her heart stop. Mason was gripping the arms of his chair, a look of determination on his face. Slowly, with Luke's discreet assistance, Mason began to rise. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Mason stood upright, his prosthetic legs supporting him. Emma's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. "Mason," she whispered, her voice trembling. He took a tentative step forward, his movements deliberate and steady. Though the effort was immense, his focus never wavered. When he reached Emma, he smiled through the tears in his own eyes. "For you," he said softly. "I wanted to stand with you on our wedding day." Emma was overcome with emotion. She threw her arms around Mason, holding him tightly as sobs of joy escaped her. The guests erupted into applause, their cheers echoing across the vineyard. A love without limits. As Mason returned to his wheelchair with Luke's help, Emma knelt beside him, cupping his face in her hands. "You're incredible," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I can't believe you did this for me." "I did it for us," Mason replied. "You've given me so much, Emma. I wanted to show you that I'll always do whatever it takes to be by your side." Their love, already strong, felt unbreakable in that moment. As the ceremony concluded and the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Emma and Mason sealed their vows with a kiss, their hearts overflowing with gratitude and joy. The guests cheered once more as the newlyweds made their way down the aisle, hand in hand, ready to face the future together. For Emma and Mason, the wedding wasn't just the beginning of their marriage. It was a testament to the boundless power of love and the strength they found in each other. A celebration of love. As the ceremony ended, the guests made their way to the reception area, still buzzing with excitement and admiration for what they had just witnessed. Mason's surprise had left everyone deeply moved, and the energy in the air was electric. The vineyard's outdoor reception space was bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun, with strings of fairy lights draped across wooden beams and tables adorned with soft floral arrangements. Emma and Mason, now officially husband and wife, lingered behind for a moment of quiet together before joining their guests. Emma held Mason's hands tightly, her tears of joy still glistening on her cheeks. "I don't even know where to begin," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "That was the most beautiful thing anyone has ever done for me." Mason smiled, his own eyes damp. "You've done so much for me, Emma. You've given me strength, hope, and love. I wanted to show you how much you mean to me." Emma leaned down, pressing her forehead against his. "You've shown me more than I ever dreamed of, Mason. I don't know how I got so lucky." Their private moment was interrupted by Luke, who peeked around the corner with a grin. "Hate to break up the lovebirds, but your guests are waiting to celebrate with you." Emma laughed, wiping her tears. "All right, let's go give them a show." The reception begins. As Emma and Mason entered the reception area, the crowd erupted into applause and cheers. The DJ announced their arrival with a joyful flourish, and the couple made their way to the center of the dance floor, hand in hand. Mason's wheelchair glided effortlessly alongside Emma, her ivory gown trailing behind her like a cloud. Their first dance was a moment of pure magic, the song Mason had chosen, one that Emma had always loved but hadn't expected, filled the air. As the music swelled, Mason reached out for Emma's hand, guiding her into a gentle sway. The two moved as if the rest of the world had melted away, their connection palpable. Midway through the dance, Mason surprised Emma yet again. With Luke's help, he rose to his feet, holding on to Emma for support. The crowd gasped, then erupted into applause, their cheers echoing across the vineyard. Emma's eyes filled with tears once more as she wrapped her arms around Mason, their movements slow and deliberate but filled with unspoken love. "You keep taking my breath away," Emma whispered. Mason chuckled softly, his voice warm. "That's the plan." Stories and speeches. After the dance, the evening unfolded with heartfelt toasts, delicious food, and joyous laughter. Emma's maid of honor, her childhood friend Sophie, gave a touching speech that left everyone teary-eyed. "I've known Emma for as long as I can remember," Sophie began. "She's always been someone who sees beauty where others might not. But when she met Mason, something changed. She didn't just see beauty, she found it in a way that transformed her." Turning to Mason, Sophie added, "You've brought out the best in her, and she's done the same for you. Watching the two of you is like watching a masterpiece come to life. I'm so happy you found each other." Luke followed with his own speech, blending humor and sincerity. "Mason's always been stubborn," he joked. "But this time, it's that stubbornness that made something extraordinary happen. Emma, you've given him a reason to fight, to push himself further than he ever thought possible. You've shown all of us what love can do." The toasts continued, each one a testament to the impact Emma and Mason's love had on those around them. Family members shared stories of resilience and growth. Friends spoke of inspiration and hope, and by the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. A night of joy. As the night wore on, the atmosphere shifted from tender to jubilant. Guests flooded the dance floor, the music transforming the reception into a lively celebration. Emma and Mason joined in the revelry, their joy infectious. Mason, now comfortably back in his wheelchair, impressed everyone with his enthusiasm, spinning Emma around as they laughed and danced. The vineyard staff ensured that everything flowed seamlessly, from the decadent dinner to the beautifully designed wedding cake that featured subtle nods to Mason's artwork and Emma's design aesthetic. Guests marveled at the attention to detail, noting how the entire event seemed to reflect the couple's unique love story. At one point, Emma's father took Mason aside for a quiet conversation. "I just want you to know how proud I am of you," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "You've shown my daughter a kind of love I always hoped she'd find. Thank you for that." Mason, deeply touched, nodded. "Thank you for trusting me with her. She's everything." Nearby, Emma shared a similar moment with Mason's mother, a kind woman with a warm smile. "I can't thank you enough for loving my son the way you do," she told Emma. "You've given him a light I haven't seen in years." Emma took her hands and squeezed them gently. "He's given me just as much, if not more. I'm the lucky one." A quiet goodbye. As the evening drew to a close, the couple shared one last private moment under the starry sky. The vineyard was quiet now, save for the distant murmur of the remaining guests and the soft chirping of crickets. Mason and Emma stood together near the edge of the hill, the cool night air wrapping around them. "Today was perfect," Emma said, leaning her head against Mason's shoulder. "I'll never forget it profound truth it revealed. Love, when nurtured with courage and kindness, can conquer anything."